I'm not going to keep the hat on. That was just the most extra thing that I could find. So, extroverted sensing. What the heck is it? It's this weird cognitive function that doesn't seem to have a lot of voices behind it on the internet. So I thought that maybe me telling you my experience of running with dominant SE would help you guys learn a little bit more about the function itself and maybe what someone who runs with SE needs in life. Can you tell I didn't plan an intro for this video? So before I did a deep dive into MBTI and the cognitive functions, I honestly would not have known how to explain extroverted sensing to you because I thought that it was the only mode of living. But now I've done some research and I've done some introspection and I've realized that the function of extroverted sensing is one that I was running with for most of my life without even realizing it. So, for those of you who don't know, extroverted sensing is the dominant function of the ESTP and the ESFP, which I am. It is the auxiliary function of the ISFP and the ISTP. It is the tertiary function of the ENFJ and the ENTJ, and it is the inferior function of the INTJ and the INFJ. So to sum up, extroverted sensing is collecting and interacting with concrete and tangible data in the real world. Now, it's an exploring function, so it's similar to extroverted intuition or NE, which is another sort of exploring function. However, where NE gathers and explores ideas and concepts, SE gathers and explores real world tangible data and experiences. Now, SE users can present similarly to NE users, especially DOMs with NE, so ENFP and ENTP, in that they're both running with exploring functions. However, their reasons for why they're exploring and where they're getting their energy from is actually completely different. That's why, contrary to what the online test might tell you, it's actually not really possible to be half ENFP and half ESFP, because the moment you change that second letter around, the first and eighth function of both the types completely switch around. How does that work? How's that possible? You tell me, online test, you tell me. Now, the important thing to understand about extroverted sensing, and if there's one thing that you take away from this video, let this be it. Extroverted sensors get their energy, their fulfillment, their purpose, their joy from experiencing things in the real world. They will therefore be their most happy, free and fulfilled when they feel that they are free and able to experience and interact with whatever they like in the real world. Of course, if they're a mature SE user, they will know that they cannot just interact with anything they like in the real world, but the joy comes from having the freedom to be able to make that choice. So it's important to note that for other extroverted types who run with a more people-focused extroverted function, so for example, extroverted feeling, they get their energy from interacting with people, whereas SE users get their energy from just having experiences, whether there are people there or not, in a sense. It's why we might prefer being on the dance floor at a party rather than in a conversation with you at a party. It's more the experiences and the world than the people necessarily. Now, don't get me wrong, it's like so much better if someone is there, but it's not necessary for us to get energy. Extroverted sensors, let me know your thoughts on that in the comments. So one of the hardest things about being an extroverted sensor is that it's really hard for us to engage in concepts or ideas. I mean, we can, but it's just not natural, so it drains our energy a little bit. And it's not that we don't care about abstract concepts or ideas, it's just that we prefer whatever is tangibly in front of us than anything that we can create or conceive of in our minds. And I know that 100 jaws just dropped of the intuitors in the audience. But this is why MBTI is so helpful. You can understand what it's like for people who aren't like you. We're a little bit different. So even if I'm with 7 people in a room, which as an extrovert, right, that should give me a lot of energy. Wrong. If they're discussing concepts or ideas that are quite abstract and not grounded in any kind of tangible, relatable way for me to the real world, I will inevitably lose energy. A good example of this is when I play Dungeons and Dragons, which is a tabletop role-playing game, which you sit around a table, you're all sitting in a chair for it can be up to 5 hours, and you're playing a game, but it's all in your imagination pretty much, and it's so much fun. But if there isn't enough role-playing, which for me is the thing that stimulates me because it's acting, I get to do different voices, I get to be a character, then I will inevitably need to nap after 2 hours. Now, I can't change this. This is just how I am. It's the same as you introverted types. and how you will get drained if you're in a room full of people or there's too much energy. After a certain amount of time, you're just gonna have to leave the room. It's inevitable. You can't stay there without losing your energy. My preference will always be interacting with the immediate world, the tangible world in front of me. You know, being up on my feet, chatting, feeling things, moving quickly, country hopping, chasing thrills. That's where all the stereotypes come from. So a lot of people sum up SE as, you know, living in the moment. And I feel that that rings true for us because to me, at any given time, I'm just focused on what's immediately in front of me and I'm not thinking about tomorrow. To me, next week, tomorrow just doesn't exist. I mean, it exists, and like, of course we use words that imply we're thinking about tomorrow, but it doesn't come naturally to us when the thing that is immediately fulfilling our needs is like right in front of us. Now, this can be problematic as a young ESFP because it can lead you to make some pretty irresponsible decisions. But as with all types, we ESFPs can use MBTI to help us understand that we need to take that step back and actively nurture that NI insight that's going to help us make the best decisions for the long term. But naturally, we don't see past the present moment. Naturally, we're just immersed in whatever's in front of us and we just want to keep lapping up whatever is hitting us, being adaptable to whatever's coming at us. That's why we have the reputations of being entertainers, party animals, etc. This also means that it's not supernatural for us to want to wait for an outcome that's going to take a long time to achieve. So as a result, we can become quite impatient, which makes sense given that the real moment is the only thing that's important to us. So we want to bridge the gap between action and outcome, especially for ESFPs because we have that FI auxiliary function that lets us know exactly what we want. And so we know what we want and we want it now. Understanding this about being an ESFP can be really helpful in your own self-growth because it can help you to temper that naturally self-interested response that's going to naturally make you have tunnel vision to whatever you want in the moment and not consider the needs of the other people around you. So MBTI can help, well, has helped me as an ESFP realize that that is a natural tendency of mine. I can't hide from it. The only way to grow is to accept that it's a tendency in the first place and to try and overcome it and to take that step back in those moments when our FI is really driving us, working with that impulsiveness of the SE to do that thing that makes us feel good right now. Take that step back and be like, no, I know from the data that I've built up over my entire life that this isn't going to be helpful. It might make me feel good right now, but it's not going to be the best thing for me in the long run. So back to my point. We like to do things with immediate results. So that's why we like things like sport, because we're engaging in activity and we're going to get the outcome of winning or losing like straight away. We like to fix things with our hands because we are in complete control of when that outcome comes. And the outcome isn't far away. We like to do things like perform, act, entertain because we're getting that immediate reaction from the audience. We're not gonna have to wait for that. That's immediate gratification for what we're engaging in that moment. The utilization of MBTI helps us to temper this natural impatience that we might have as SE users and wanting to do things now rather than wait for the long-term benefits or long-term outcomes. And it's really hasn't been natural for me to implement changes in my life that help me to focus on those long-term goals. But because of MBTI, I've really tried to implement those changes and I'm really feeling the fruits of them in that even though it's not natural for me, I can feel that I'm becoming a more well-rounded individual as a result. So another popular belief about SE users is that because of that impatient tendency, we don't like long-term planning. That's not entirely true. If I'm super invested in a long-term plan or goal with my FI, I will make it happen. But again, it's not really my natural tendency to do that long-term planning because my brain just naturally tells me I want to be open to anything that comes at me and I want to be adapting to whatever's hitting me. So it's actually kind of silly for me to even assume that I'll know what's going to be happening in the next month from now. I once made a decision to pack up a suitcase and move to South Korea. I had literally no fear or anxiety in deciding to uproot my life and go move to another country where I knew no one. I ended up living there for 2.5 years and it was one of the best decisions I made. That should tell you how naturally impulsive we are and how that gut inside us really wants to follow these impulses. And the fact that I didn't feel fear or anxiety when doing that tells you that it is my natural mode, the mode in which I'm the most comfortable, which really tells us a lot about those dominant cognitive functions and how they are our natural mode that we are in without even trying, and they're our savior function, the one we love, the one we're addicted to. Now, me saying that we have a natural tendency to be impulsive and want to act on those impulses does not mean that we should act on all the impulses. I am not saying that whatsoever. And of course, as we become an adult, as everyone does, we have to make sacrifices about those things that we want to do all of the time because we have to be responsible. But it's helpful to know that that is our state that gives us the most life, joy, energy, fulfillment, so that we can understand I still need to have space in my life to move within this function in order to remain a fulfilled individual who's going to be the best version of me for those people around who I love. You need to make time for that first function. It's not just going to change overnight. You need to find ways to helpfully practice that. Now let's talk about some blessings about SE. So one of the best things about SE is that I just don't worry a lot of the time. If I've got something that I know I'm going to be scared about on Friday coming up, something that's going to make me anxious, I won't care about it until like 2 hours before the thing. It can mean that we don't prepare well sometimes, but that's besides the point. Another plus of having SE is that I can focus really well entirely on one thing. Now there are exceptions. I find it, for instance, very hard to sit down with someone and have a deep conversation at a party when there are 1,000 other sensory stimuli around me. It's basically just like a kid in a candy store for an ESFP who loves engaging in sensory experiences. I mean, my FI cares very much for the person who wants to talk to me, but my SE, lol, is pulling me towards that dance floor like you wouldn't believe. And the SE wins most of the time when I'm at a party, but I always end up scheduling a coffee date with that person later in the week so that I can focus completely on them. There is a difference with something that I'm super invested in. So if I'm really invested in and I care a lot about it, or the stakes are really high, I will be able to completely zero in and focus on that thing without getting distracted by any kind of sensory stimuli around me. And I think that sums up SE really well. It's like we're really good at just sensory data and stimuli. We're really good at dealing with it, handling it, manipulating it if we need to, and it's what gives us our energy. So we don't get overwhelmed by it. It's why I guess we're such people, and why we're such entertainers is because we're naturally comfortable with 1,000 different things around us. So the fact that there's an audience in front of us doesn't intimidate us. And the fact that there are so many things going on won't take away from our flow state. That is our flow state. So, okay, let's talk about some downsides. I mean, I've kind of chucked a few downsides in here so far, but obviously ESFPs have some pretty bad reps on the internet. Don't know why. So some of the downsides of having SE as a dominant function, or maybe second function, I don't know, you guys tell me in the comments, is that friendships can be really hard because if people don't understand that we need that space, things can get messy and we can end up hurting people's feelings without meaning to, which sucks. It like really sucks. For instance, we're not good at replying to messages. Like, I've tried to change this about myself and I just can't. We as extroverted sensors are so occupied with what is immediately in front of us. That friend is not immediately in front of us. So it's actually hard to articulate this in a way that doesn't sound like we're the worst people. Look, I'm not saying that we shouldn't try and engage with our friends in this way. I'm just alerting you to the fact that it is hard for SE users to maintain friendships via text message, especially long distance friendships, or friendships where there's any kind of expectation from the other party that we're going to text them X amount of times per week, or we're going to see them X amount of times per month. I actually have 4 long distance friends with whom I've been long distance friends for over 3 years, and it works because there's no expectation of how much we're going to talk to each other, and they understand about me. In fact, most of the friends I have in my life understand about me that I'd much rather meet face to face, and when we're not meeting face to face, we're probably not communicating that much, but it doesn't mean that I love them any less. My extroverted sensing friends, we literally never communicate, but then when we meet up with each other, it's like we're besties. It's like we never separated. So if you have an extroverted sense in your life, it's probably good to understand that that is a weakness of theirs, and you might need to extend a little bit of grace to them in that way, or suggesting more hangouts. maybe with some exciting activity like skydiving or something. Another downside is that we are naturally playful, and we do have sorry, that's not the downside. The downside is that we have the best intentions. That's also not the downside. The downside is that we're super playful and we do have the best intentions, but it can often be perceived as attention seeking or arrogant or obnoxious or too much, because we're just like puppy dogs, especially in a new situation. When I'm amongst people and there's music and food and I can be, you know, flitting around, taking control of situations, hosting, getting people cups of tea, telling jokes, telling stories, engaging in other people's lives in like short bursts, grabbing a microphone, giving a speech, encouraging people to get on a dance floor, that kind of stuff, like that gives me life. At parties and in situations like that, I am just immensely comfortable. And I feel like this is specifically the case for ESTPs and ESFPs because SE is dominating us rather than assisting us as it would for the ISFP and the ISTP. So it can be like much more obvious with those SE Dom users, which is why they're so easy to identify, especially in a party situation. I do hope you've learned something about SE in this video. Would love to hear your feedback in the comments. I love having SE, I think it's fantastic, but of course I do because I can't fathom life being any other way. Now this next bit is important. Some of you in the comments might be thinking, gosh, like, I wish I had SE. It sounds like so much fun. Like, life would just be so much easier. Like, I understand why you would say that, but I want you to understand that, like, for you, that's not necessarily the case, and that's totally okay. Remember that MBTI helps us to understand what we do need. And for an SE user, that is living in the moment and being in contact with that tangible world, but not every type will get energy from living in the moment in that way. I would never tell an INTP or an INFP to get out of their heads and live in the moment by engaging in the tangible world around them and not exploring thoughts and ideas. Like, because that's not going to fuel them. They don't value that. That's not important to them. Like, their version of living in the moment, they do, but it looks completely different. Like, their version of living in the moment might just be engaging with the idea that's immediately hitting them or talking about, I don't know, emotions or feelings with people. I don't know. Tell me in the comments, guys. What's your version of living in the moment? Anyway, so your version of living in the moment is going to look completely different. But for us, for SE users, living in the moment in terms of engaging with the tangible world gives us energy. It gives us life. It fuels us. And if you have an SE user in your life, especially an SE dominant user, or if you want an SE user in your life, you're going to have to understand that. I think I'll leave it there because I want to leave some of those more detailed topics for another video. Also, I could talk forever, let's be honest. Thank you for watching this video, guys. I hope that you're well, and I'll chat to you later. Bye.